Last week, I laid out in my budget that we invest more in safer communities and expand access to mental health services for those affected by gun violence. Congressional Republicans should pass my budget instead of calling for cuts in these services or defunding the police.
The project has been receiving an uprising of online activism against it, including more than 1 million letters written to the White House in a protest of the project, and a Change.org petition with millions of signatures. Advocates are expected to challenge the project in the court justice, and so let's see what happens, folks. There is an important update for all Americans. Experts are now warning the American people that you may owe money to the IRS this year. It is due to changes to the tax relief benefits and tax credits, but there are some changes that you can take. Although filing taxes can be a stressful process, there's often an upside. It's getting a refund. This year, filers are not seeing any refunds at all. If anything, they're looking at owing the IRS more money for the first time in a long time. And now, in a recent interview, a chief tax information officer said we are going to see a big increase in balance due filers. But Mark Steber isn't surprised by this trend in the slightest. In fact, he has even anticipated it before. Plus, in 2021, many key tax credits got a stabilized boost. The child tax credit, for example, saw its maximum value rise $2,000 per child to $3,000 per child ages 6 to 17, and $3,600 per child under 6. That was a huge bump. The credit also fully became refundable, so that if an eligible filer owed the IRS more money, it could still receive its entire value. But those enhancements went away in 2022, so did enhancements to the Child and Dependent Care Credit, and the Earned Income Tax Credit, that is. So that explains why many people are not only seeing tax refunds this year, but looking at the IRS debts. In 2021, the American Rescue Plan sent $1,400 stimulus checks into the recipients' bank accounts. Those who were eligible for the money didn't even receive it in 2021, were able to claim it on 2022 tax returns. But at this point, they aren't even really lingering stimulus funds to collect and use offset to tax liabilities, which also explains why the IRS suddenly started staring down the IRS balances, and they're not sure how they'll recover from this. If you owe the IRS money but don't have it on hand to cover your tax bill, don't panic. They also have a problem, and don't ignore the problem. The good news is that the IRS will commonly let taxpayers and filers pay off their debts over time, via installments and arrangements. It won't stop you from incurring interest, though, on the money you owe to the agency. But if you make your payments in a timely manner under one of those arrangements, the IRS comes after the repaid ones. But Mark Steber, a IRS agent, noted that if you're looking to have a writing from the IRS and a large check, and you've done tax yourself, it could be worth it to hire a professional for another look. They may be able to find different deductions that you didn't know you were eligible for.
Spending on little ones, and we need to be investing a lot more in childcare to grow our economy. But these MAGA House Republicans are threatening to cut the little bit of funding that we do have going into childcare.
To offend America's health, security, and freedom. The rule includes 5 pieces of landmark legislation, which the gentleman, Mr. Morelli, has very clearly explained. I thank him and Mr. McGovern again for their skilled leadership in assembling this rule and steering this crucial legislation to the floor. First, this week we'll have our version of NDAA, which you explained. It supports our nation's servicemen and women. It strengthens our national security and promotes national leadership on the global arena.
Folks, we got 10 news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, SSI, and SSDI. Here's the most important part that you need to know. Now, the Senate Republicans have actually slashed programs like Social Security for a long time. And what this means is that data has been released on Social Security. The lawmakers are pushing for immediate changes to be made, and these changes will negatively impact millions of seniors that receive Social Security or SSI checks. For instance, Republican John Thune slashed such programs would be a solution to the national debt. He wants to cut out Social Security and stop stimulus. Bloomberg News reports that even the senators said threatening a default would be catastrophic consequences for the economy and risk causing a recession. So he told reporters there has been a pretty broad bipartisan understanding that a default is not an option. He then contradicted it. Currently, the debt ceiling has started to expire in the first quarter of 2023, so House Republicans are on board with the plan. In October, Kevin McCarthy said that the parties plan to use the debt ceiling to push through Republican priorities like slashing Social Security and Medicare, while Republicans taking control of the House with only a slim majority for Democrats in the Senate. Republicans have the leverage and votes to potentially force cuts to the welfare program. The party has already engaged in political brinksmanship with a debt default last year, threatening to tank the economy over the Build Back Better Act, a bill that ultimately didn't pass for separate reasons. So cuts to Social Security and Medicare will be devastating for recipients and for the country at large. Social Security is consistently the most effective program in the United States history, cuts poverty, and provides millions of people with stimulus cash. Introducing cuts at a time when people are most dependent on the stimulus money is actually a pretty bad decision. It will continue working far past typical retirement age just to afford basic needs. People are being thrown into deep economic and personal instability due to the lack of healthcare coverage. So Bernie Sanders has even been pushing Congress to expand Social Security. He said that the government could easily do so by ensuring that people with higher incomes pay their fair share. Currently, those making $147,000 paying even 12% of their yearly income to the program, and those making more pay a smaller portion. This is due to the highly regressive restructure of the Social Security tax, which stops taxing an income above a certain threshold, meaning those making more than $1 million a year stop paying to the program by the end of February. So, stimulus cash is necessary.
With gas prices, they're still dramatically higher than they were when the president came to office. We're in the middle, as everyone knows, of a recession. That's 2 quarters in a row of negative growth and 40-year high inflation. I can't think of anything the administration has failed to do to screw all this up. And look at what the American people think of their performance. It's stunningly high, the disapproval. Finally, I would say to our friend Joe Manchin, he made a terrible deal. A terrible deal.
The IRS is urging that eligible Americans take action to claim the available stimulus money. Many low-income households and families qualify to receive an extra $3,000. That is $3,000 in stimulus checks. You can be eligible for this, so just continue watching. State governors are working with Congress just to allocate the money directly towards new relief programs. Now, generous child tax credits also providing qualifying parents with up to $3,600 per child last year. And there is some good news. For families who missed out on some or all of those payments, it's not too late to file for the money. The IRS has announced that there is a new tool that can be used, but to use the tool, the eligible Americans must file by November 15th to submit their information for the funds. That message applies to parents with little to no income, who consequently do not typically have tax filing obligations. This year, however, those non-filers have an added incentive to submit their information to the government. Enhanced tax credits that were temporarily enacted through the American Rescue Plan legislation in 2021. Those include the child tax credit and the third stimulus check. It includes an enhanced child tax credit that brought the total lump sums of $3,600 per child to $3,000. Advanced monthly payments of up to $300 per child were deployed last year. The remaining sums were available by filing tax returns this year. The enhanced credit is fully refundable and made available to parents with little to no incomes for the year. According to new census data, the more generous credit helped prompt a large reduction in child poverty between 2020 and next year. So as with all the stimulus money that was created during this time,